I'm here today from Pearson, but I have experienced a number of different organisations in relation to for-profit and commercial higher education. As far as Pearson is concerned, we don't currently have degree awarding powers. We are an awarding body. We're able to award a range of other sorts of programs, including some in higher education, but we don't have degree awarding powers. We have been public about the fact that we do intend to apply for degree awarding powers at an appropriate time in the future, but we're not there yet. We're at the very, very beginning. So I only started there in February, and my role is to work out how we're going to become a player in the degree sector, and how we're going to design and deliver and develop our own programs. So what I was going to talk about today is, it's by way of a case study, but it's a case study that's happening as it's not over yet, we're in the middle of it. So what I'm talking about is emerging, and some aspects of it may end up changing. Our long-term plan is to be able to offer a range of different types of degrees that have different pedagogical approaches, and therefore they may have different prices associated with them, and be designed for different sorts of student needs. So I'm only going to be talking about one aspect of what we're ultimately going to be hoping to do. So our first program is we're planning to launch in September 2012 is an undergraduate honours degree in business and management. And we're taking a very collaborative approach in the way that we're going to be doing that. So first of all, we have a validating partner, which is Royal Holloway, and they're also working with us. They're not just validating it, but also contributing and helping to the thinking and the design of the degree. And we're going to be delivering it in a range of different places, and we're not going for a central Pearson campus, not for this particular program. And what we're doing instead is we're going to have classes at different colleges, also in industry premises, and in our own premises, and perhaps in some hired conference style premises. So there'll be a range of different teaching and learning ambiences, if you like, that the students can select from if they want to participate in the degree. In relation to all of our degrees, we plan to have an academic lead and an industry lead and a student experience or student voice lead that's involved right from the beginning in the way that we actually design the program, and that's happening with our first degree. And those three voices are of equal importance to us. So having industry and the student voice, I mean obviously with all degrees we always have a strong academic voice involved, but having industry and the student voice as an integral part of that is very important for the way we see ourselves being able to contribute to the higher education sector. So in this particular program, our industry leads, we actually have 3 people from 2 different companies. So we have directors of graduate recruitment from BT and also from Cisco, but they're not there to design a program specifically for just BT and Cisco. They're there representing the employer voice, so they're talking about a much wider range of skills and knowledge things that they feel are needed across all sorts of different industries. And then we have Aaron Porter, who was the president of the NUS last year, who's the student experience lead. And we have Professor Nigel Slack, who's an expert in operations management from Warwick Business School, who's the academic lead in that little core of people. And then we have a range of other people that are contributing as well. And as we go on to develop different modules, we'll be repeating that kind of pattern throughout, so that we have student input into it, and we have industry input, and obviously we have the academic input. So what we're trying to do with the degree is we're trying to work on the interface between what's needed from an academic point of view for graduates with an honours degree in the UK, what it means to be a graduate here, along with, and how that applies to the workplace. So we're trying to keep it, we're trying to work the 2 of them together. So if we're talking about theories of management and so on, then we look at how that's applied and actually apply it where it's possible, more or less immediately, in the way that we're developing the teaching, learning and assessment strategy for the students. So we're trying to link those 2 things together. So we are, as a company, we are very committed to education. In this particular section of what we're doing, we would see that as making sure, or trying to make sure, that the students at the end of it are useful and employees who are able to contribute to their employer, whether that's industry or the charitable sector or wherever it is that they may end up working. So we don't see a conflict between those two things. We see them as inherently connected, and that the academic skills and knowledge that they need are a very important part of that, along with some of the perhaps broader skills and knowledge that go together in that. So that would be our position, our strategy with the way we're planning to have ourselves presented in HE. So in a practical sense, because we're going to have a number of different centres across the country, all of those are going to be networked together. So we're seeing this as a single national cohort of students. So a student might choose a teaching centre that's in a particular location, but they'll be networked together with other students at other locations, whether those other locations are other colleges or whether they're in industry premises or wherever they might happen to be. And that, we're designing it as a very interactive program, and one of the things that's come through very clearly from our discussions with our industry leads is the need for people to be able to communicate across a whole range of different, in a whole range of different manners. So this is not an online degree. There are regular face-to-face classes every week, and that's an important part of it as well. But there is also, so they have the students will have their face-to-face classmates, colleagues, if you like, at their teaching centre. But then they will also have online teams or colleagues as well that they're also working with each week. And then the entire cohort itself will come together each term at industry-based workshops, which are built around case studies provided by industry, and with a lot of problem-solving aspects to that, as well as an annual residential that brings everyone together. And what we want the students to be able to do is to be able to present and to talk and act like a normal face-to-face human being when they're with people, but also be capable of working in a company or an environment where you have to be speaking and dealing with all sorts of people located at different, in all sorts of different parts of the country, ultimately different parts of the world, and different time zones and all sorts of things, but we're focusing on the UK only at the moment. So we're trying to develop those skills in the way that the classes themselves are actually run. The tutors as well, and the lecturers, they will also be part of the national academic community. So we will have a centralised approach to the way that the individual modules are designed. And so students will be working through similar learning outcomes and reasonably similar activities in the different centres. But the tutors across one subject will work together as a group to do that, and then so we design it once, if you like, and then it's carried out at the various different centres. The assessments will be centralised, and so we're trying to go for a highly consistent approach. We've had some difficulty in defining the course and whether it's full-time, part-time, and how long it takes to complete, and all sorts of things like that, because it doesn't fit easily, or some aspects of it don't fit easily to the kind of accepted categories. It is, according to the various definitions that we've looked at, it would qualify as a full-time course that's taken over 4 years. The students are studying throughout the year, but they're also able to work at the same time. So it's designed for students who are working, and it's designed in a way that if they're working in a relevant job, then there's various aspects about what they're doing that can be interwoven into the course, including the selection of assessments and the various topics that they undertake and so on, so that those two actually work together. So it's a little bit like a sandwich course, because that takes 4 years and it's a full-time course, but rather than taking a year out, they're doing some work as they go along. So we're envisaging that those students will be working 20 hours a week, up to full-time work while they're undertaking the program. For students who are not working, or perhaps only doing a little tiny bit of work, we've also decided to offer a 2-year version where the skills and practice that they would have been undertaking in the workplace are replicated as far as we can with a workshop approach. So those students will be doing the same assessments, and they'll be participating in many of the same activities, but rather than going to work, they'll be having a workshop approach in what they are doing. And probably as a consequence of that, we're going to be looking at different prices for those courses, because the latter will have a much higher contact time of teachers and facilities and all sorts of things than the former, and that will probably end up being reflected in the way that we actually price the course. The other thing is that throughout it, in the way that we're approaching the teaching, learning and assessment strategy, is to reflect work practices in the way that we do that. So rather than doing, well, obvious example, rather than doing traditional essays, they'd be more likely to do things that might be report or design or writing a strategy or an analysis document, those kinds of things. So they're still picking up the analytical skills and the research skills that need to go into that and so on, but what's being presented is more like what they would do if they're in a workplace situation. But also in other things as well. So the classes we're looking at for a number of the modules will form what we're currently calling business teams. So they'll be working together more as colleagues. There'll be an appraisal process as they actually go through the program. The entry requirements and the entry process is going to be more like a job interview with an assessment day or an assessment procedure of some sort wrapped around it. And the same at the exit point. They have a major project they have to do at the end, which is meant to be built around solving some kind of problem in some kind of business context, but also a viva, which is like will be done like an interview for a promotion, in which they could be asked about all sorts of different aspects of the course and their interaction with other people, and that hopefully they'll be capable of demonstrating and articulating to a panel the various skills and the things that they know about and their experiences that they have had over the course of the program. So what we're anticipating is it will have a very different flavour to the traditional 3-year campus-based degree in many ways. They will still be working through the 3 levels that are required of a degree, and they'll still be needing to do assessments that measured against all the learning outcomes that are required in the benchmark status and all that sort of thing. So having the academic infrastructure behind it is very important, and one of the reasons behind our choice of Royal Holloway as a validating partner. But we also want the students to be able to consciously see and experience how all of that is relevant to what they'll ultimately doing when they enter the workplace.